It is projected that by 2010, cancer will become the leading cause of death worldwide. My mother was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 49. She did not smoke, she ate 5 fruits and vegetables a day, exercised regularly, and her parents never had cancer. Yet she was diagnosed with the disease. What caused her cancer? No one could say. I kept wondering why. Every day, about 3 new synthetic chemicals enter the consumer market. Of the 100,000 synthetic chemicals in heavy commercial use, only about 2% have toxicological profiles. In other words, every day, without our consent, we're exposed to about 95,000 untested chemicals. Who exactly are the world's leading chemical producers? Now a new product is on grocery store shelves: genetically modified foods. Who develops most of the world's genetically modified crops? While only a handful of independent studies have been conducted, health problems ranging from infertility to proliferative changes have been detected. Do these foods cause cancer? We have no idea, because no long-term health studies have been conducted anywhere. But rest easy, because if someone in your family is diagnosed with cancer, a number of treatments are available, and here are the companies that provide them.
The chemistry industry basically transforms products from resources such as oil or natural gas or electricity or various other types of mineral products, transforms them through changing the molecular structure of those products into products that are useful for the daily lives of Canadians or Americans or other people around the world. So if you start with a very basic material such as oil or natural gas, you change that molecular structure and you end up with plastic, or you end up with styrofoam that insulates houses, or you end up with filters that purify water, or you end up with chemicals that end up as part of drugs, or you end up with Kevlar vests. So chemistry is really the science of transforming products so that they become more valued, you add value, and useful to citizens of a country.
This is Sarnia, situated 300 kilometers from Toronto. You and I may not live in Sarnia, but we use the fruits of its labor. Vinyl sidings, plastic patio furniture, pesticides, rechargeable batteries, plastic food containers, compact disc cases, paints, marine and jet fuel, and gasoline. To make these products, over 5.5 million kilograms of suspected and known human carcinogens, which are substances that cause cancer, are emitted each year. Dioxins, one of the most toxic carcinogens known to science, is also emitted during these chemical processes. Sitting in the middle of these over 60 chemical plants is the Anjanons First Nations Reservation.
We're going to review the minutes from the last meeting, which was health issues. We were raising our concerns with respect to all the pollution that we've been experiencing. They didn't want to hear those concerns. They just didn't want to hear those concerns. So therefore, they cut the meeting off.
Actually, that's how almost every one of our meetings with the government has been. Because I know when they had the same meeting for the industry workers, because they were trying to tell the industry that they have to name all their chemicals to them, and they said they already do to the NPRI, but they only report, over 10,000 tons worth of chemicals that are released. And the industry was kind of upset because they didn't want to give away their trade secrets in order to know this. And they say they do self-report, and they were talking about who's going to actually police them. So right now, you just let industry police themselves. You MOE are just sitting there in your butts in your office waiting for them to report to you and tell you what's going on. And we shouldn't have that. That should not be allowed at all.
The changes to our environment, the pollution, the changes in the air, the changes in the water, how they are affecting our nation, because we are afraid to hunt the game, we're afraid to eat the fish, we're afraid to use the medicine. So what is that doing to us as a people?
I am afraid of using the medicines around here. The women were told not to make teas with them. We were told not to smudge with them because we don't know what kind of toxic gases come out when it's being burnt and smudged. And you're inhaling it as well as the sweetgrass. You're inhaling it. So you don't know what kind of chemicals are being inhaled when you're using these medicines.
No, I don't know. I think we've been guinea pigs for all these years, and noticing now they're seeing how many cancers are coming up and how Lambton County is above Ontario's rate of cancers, and now they're starting to look at it.
So, someone said something about a toxic tour?
Yeah, well, but we were also told not to call it toxic tour anymore. But I don't know, Wilson had put it on Facebook or whatever, asking everybody, well, what should we call it instead? And they said, what's so wrong with that name? That's what it is. But anyway, we're going to tour around the res. We actually sold them the land. I don't know what year it was. They did hold a vote down here and asked people to sell the land, and I don't know how much land that they ended up selling to them, but I've asked our elders, and they said that, yeah, they were told that there was going to be chemicals. And I said, well, what did they tell you about chemicals? Said, that there'd be chemicals. And that was about it. They didn't really tell them a whole lot more. And then everybody at that time, I guess they must have been thinking of dollar signs, that they're going to get some money. And I don't know how much anybody's profited from it. When the kids ride their bikes into town and that, they say, like, if there's a mist, sometimes there's a mist and it burns. And then they have all these little walkways around here. they have them coming from Sarnia and they want to put it through Chemical Valley. Why are you trying to kill everybody? Like, God, you want them to get out and exercise? Yeah, but then they're making them breathe harder, breathe all this crap in even more. God's sakes. But anyway, this is what was Nova, but it's called Enos now, and they had a benzene release. And at that time, the wind was heading into town, so they evacuated all the plants here. And then that was about 7:15 or something. And then around midnight, it went back. The wind started heading towards us. Well, they didn't come knocking on no doors or nothing. But I called people, whoever I had phone numbers for, and I said, shut your windows and listen to the radio because I don't know what's going on, but it is benzene. I know that. So they never did tests, and then our people went to work, and they could smell something. Then they came in and tested. Oh yeah, it's too high of a level, you'll have to get out. So they evacuated the workers. I said, what about the people in the homes? What about our kids that were out there waiting for the bus? Like, oh my God.
Every single facility that does any kind of petrochemical refining emits benzene. I tell you what, on benzene in particular, there's no law limiting how much facilities can emit. I mean, the benefit that the industry has down there in having so many different facilities is nobody can point to one facility and say you're the cause of the problem. So all the industries down there have the ability to point to everybody else and say they're emitting more than we are. They should clean up the mess.
We have all kinds of evidence that our emissions have been reduced substantially. One, by measuring them, by working collectively as a group of companies to keep improving our performance. There have been examples over the years in our reports where companies have looked at the responsible care ethic and decided, well, we can't do it this way. This is either too risky to the community, we're transporting something that's in a way that's not, we can't defend it, or a product looks too risky and I'm not sure I can manage it, so let's just eliminate it. So there are countless examples, I think, where people have continually challenged themselves and improved their performance and ended up, in their view, a better company for it.
What we're finding out from the bucket sampling, because what we do is we take a sample and we ship it off to California, and then they test it to see what chemicals are in there and at what levels. Then we give it back to Global Community Monitoring, and they look up the chemicals and how they can affect your body and what the standards are in the States for these chemicals. And then we turn around and hand it to the people here in Toronto, Eco Justice, and then they look up the standards in Canada or Ontario or whatever, and they're finding that there is no standards for a lot of these chemicals here. So that's when they were showing us their slides and that, and they're showing all the chemicals that are produced and how they affect your body. And as I was looking at that, I was, oh my God, there's a whole bunch of people on the reserve that have these illnesses.
In 2004, Ada compiled a health survey of the Angenon's 900 residents. In the adults, she discovered severe chronic headaches, chronic respiratory problems, severe skin problems, neurological problems, infertility and miscarriages, birth defects, cancers, and loss of children to illness. In the children, she found severe chronic headaches, chronic respiratory problems, neurological problems, developmental problems, severe skin problems, arthritis, birth defects, kidney and bladder diseases, and cancer. What are your thoughts on the relationship between health and the petrochemical industry?
I'm not so sure what the relationship is. We do know, again, we have some legacy issues and, mesothelioma is an issue related to the use of asbestos in industry. And, that's well documented, and that's well understood, and we know that there is this legacy issue out there. It's unfortunate. We have empathy for those individuals who are suffering from mesothelioma, but we do know there's a legacy issue there. With respect to other health issues, I think there's been a lot of inferences made about the connection between health and potential emissions coming from the petrochemical industry. This is one of the reasons why we and many others in the community, major players in the community, are advocating for a comprehensive health study, a scientifically rigorous, peer-reviewed health study.
A little bit of something all by itself to you or me might not be a big deal, but little things add up over a lifetime. Think about your lungs. Your lungs, if you took them out of your chest, are as large as a tennis court. As large as a tennis court. 1 part per million, a drop of water in a swimming pool. Doesn't seem like a lot, but over the course of a lifetime, you're breathing billions of times. So the ability to take things in and keep them into your lungs is much greater. And what we know is that we're not exposed to one thing at a time. Life is a mixture. It's a mixture of good and bad things. And even one little exposure can add up over time, because we don't just get that one exposure, it's repeated over and over again.
In Sarnia, it's not if you're going to get cancer, it's when. It's sort of a double-edged sword. I mean, we wouldn't be standing here today without plastic. We wouldn't be driving our cars. We wouldn't be living the lifestyle that we're used to as North Americans if it wasn't for Chemical Valley. About 10 years ago, I started speaking out against some of the things that I saw. One of the events was we found a cat in my mom's field, and the cat had been sprayed down at the end of the season, and she was drenched with pesticides. We brought her home to die because I couldn't stand the thought of her dying in the field. We managed to save her life, but she has ongoing neurological problems. She has seizures and tremors, and if she's around any pesticides now or any type of a harsh chemical, she has seizures. And I started thinking, if it's happening to cats, what is it doing to us? So then I started looking at cosmetic pesticides and the science behind that. I have a master's degree in science, so reading this stuff became very, well, there's the kitty now. It became very entrenching in my life to learn what actually happens to chemicals when they hit our body. So, and then with my husband working in Chemical Valley, it was even more interesting learning about the stuff that happened there. And then my mom got the first of her 3 cancers. And then she got the second. And then I got cancer, and then she got the 3rd.
And this is your son?
Yeah, this is Ben. This is our little miracle guy. We were pretty grateful to have one, but that's kind of scary when you spend your whole youth avoiding having children, and then when you want to have them, it's difficult. Whoa. He was actually an anomaly. He was a twin, and the twin died early on, and I guess that's occurring quite often now as well, where the unviable twin self-aborts, and the one that can survive survives. I was pregnant when I knew that I had cancer, and they discovered it after he was born. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do anything bizarre, and yet I got cancer. And how does someone like me get cancer? That doesn't even make statistical sense.
Am I concerned about cancers in this community?
Yes.
On a personal level?
Yes.
No. And that's got nothing to do with my job here or anything else. Regrettably, in our society, there's all kinds of potentials for different exposures, lifestyle issues, and genetics all have to be factored in. I mean, clearly, I have had relatives who have terrible diseases. What that relationship is, I couldn't tell you. And again, but I don't have a concern living in the city of Sarnia related to the kinds of things that you're talking about.
We know that the levels of contamination there are among the highest ever recorded for asbestos, for benzene, for the dioxins. So why are we doing this? I mean, it's supposed to be illegal to experiment on people without their permission. That's the Nuremberg Protocols. Sarnia is violating the Nuremberg Protocols.
But say with our First Nation, though, like people have asked us, like, well, why don't you leave? Well, why should we leave? This has been our land forever, and shouldn't they be just cleaning it up? Or, you know, how do you walk away something that's been familiar to your life forever and all your other generations, and how do you walk away on that? And like, so if you did, you know, industry would try to take right over on everything anyway, move right in. But what about our loved ones at the cemetery? And, you know, if we ever had to come back, would you have to wear a gas mask over, you know, just to go visit, or what?
Are you eating 5 fruits and vegetables a day? Do you smoke? Are you drinking in moderation? That's good to hear. But we're still sorry to tell you, you have cancer.
How did this happen?
There are a number of ways in which carcinogens are created, whether it's during the manufacturing process, contained in the products themselves and released during their use, or emitted when they slowly decompose in landfills or burn in incinerators. Because no health studies are required before chemicals are licensed, we are now exposed to carcinogens in food, personal hygiene products, cosmetics, cleaning products, construction materials, clothes, electronics, and hundreds of other consumer products. After carcinogens enter our bodies through inhalation, ingestion, or the skin, they can sometimes accumulate in our bodies for up to 10 years. Hoping to distance himself from petrochemical facilities, incinerators, and nuclear power plants, our jogger has decided to escape to a national park. What our jogger doesn't know, however, is that carcinogens travel. They move with the wind and air streams. They float down rivers into lakes and oceans. They fall onto agricultural land that grows our food. For example, dioxins produced in America can be found in the Arctic, and mercury from Chinese power plants can be found in high concentrations in the Rockies. A 6-year American federal study called the Western Airborne Contaminants Assessment Project even found high levels of contaminants in 20 American Western national parks. Contamination even exceeded human consumption thresholds in 8 of the parks.
In the 1970s, we passed a number of laws that were basic environmental laws to clean up the air, the water, the soil, and provide for protection for consumers and workers. The fundamental tenet of those laws was it's better to be safe than sorry. The basic precautionary principle was in those laws in the 1970s. But in the 1980s, we moved away from that approach, and we took the position in the government that we had to have proof in terms of human harm and dead bodies. And we've now got to come back to the precautionary approach. In Europe, they've passed legislation like the REACH program to require evaluation of chemical hazards. But over the past 8 years, the Bush administration has hammered away, as has the Canadian government, at the European Union saying that it's a restraint of trade, it's going to interfere with our ability to have commerce. So the European principles have become slightly weaker because of that, but they're still better than what we have in Canada and the US today. In Canada and the US today, it is legal for you to use a bubble bath on your baby that contains a known carcinogen, something that causes cancer in animals. But not in Europe. It's not legal. So why should European babies' bottoms be safer than my grandchildren?
Midland, Michigan is home to Dow Chemical's world headquarters. While DuPont, BASF, Bayer, Monsanto, and ICI, which is today owned by ASCO Nobel, are all responsible for releasing dioxins, Dow Chemical is thought to be the world's largest root source of dioxins. Dow is also thought to be the world's largest producer of chlorine, one of the root causes of dioxins, and the largest producer of chemical feedstocks to make PVC plastics, whose life cycle is associated with more dioxin formation than any other man-made product on Earth. Because of these modern chemical processes, by 1987, dioxins were present in everything from diapers to coffee filters to tampons. In 2003, Dow released an open letter to Midland residents stating that dioxins were a naturally occurring substance. The letter, however, forgot to clarify a few important details. While forest fires and volcanoes do produce dioxins, they are not the same dioxins created during chemical processes. Man-made dioxins also outnumber the natural variety by 100 to 1. The letter also forgot to mention that the first health assessment of dioxin, completed by the American Environmental Protection Agency, estimated that more people will get more cancer from dioxins than any other chemical on Earth.
In Michigan, it has always been our governor, Republican, Democrat, it doesn't matter. Dow has the ability to send their lobbyists directly to the governor's office. During the Blanchard administration, 2 governors ago, Dow got a consent order releasing them from any state liability for the dioxin contamination on the Tittabawassee River. That's why this cleanup is a federal project, because the state released them. And you know what the citizens got for it? A boat dock. We got a boat dock. And Dow got released from state liability for the dioxin contamination on the Tittabawassee River. And that was just pulling political strings. Important fishing information. Fish consumption advisory for the Tittabawassee River from Midland to Saginaw are in effect because of dioxins and PCBs. Women and children should only eat 1 meal a month under 22 inches, 6 meals per year over 22 inches. Everyone else, unlimited consumption under 22 inches, 1 meal per week over 22 inches. See those signs up there are the Dow property. Again, this all Dow property. Dioxin is a molecule. It's a byproduct of chemical processing. It is a known carcinogen, although Dow will dispute that. Dow has been able to manufacture so much uncertainty about this chemical that if you look around the rest of the world, nobody else is debating the toxicity of dioxin, except here in mid-Michigan. In fact, one of Dow's toxicologists in the 1970s said that this is perhaps one of the most toxic materials he's ever seen.
Why do you think they dispute it now?
Because there's a financial implication. There's a pending class action lawsuit against Dow Chemical from residents on the river. And I think the implications for Dow denying the toxicity of the chemical now has bigger, broader implications worldwide. There are a lot of dioxin contaminations around the country that, not just Dow is responsible for, that could be settled or could have ramifications from a settlement or agreement on the toxicity of dioxin or on the settlement of a class action lawsuit here. I think the ramifications are huge for the chemical industry.
In the 80s, we became involved with dioxins. The Department of Chemistry asked if we had some breast milk for them. And we had a couple of ladies coming from the western colonies of Holland. They just emigrated to our country, and we had Dutch ladies that were here their whole life. So we provided him with some leftovers, and then he came back to me and he said, it's so peculiar, because I find quite high levels in the Dutch mothers that has lived here their whole life, but I don't find anything in the ones coming from your western colonies, from the Suriname colonies. That's completely clean. And I said, well, that can be because they have never lived in a situation of where there was no petrochemical industry. So these chemicals are highly persistent, and they are in your fat. And during the night, when most of your breast milk is made, it comes out of your fat and is then, together with the pollutants, are used and comes into the milk of the baby. For politicians, they don't like long-term studies. But actually, scientifically, that's very important, of course. That's actually the heart of the matter. Yeah, it's what's happening prenatally and what is going on then. And the first 9 months of your life are probably the most important. And unfortunately, many people that are in high positions still thinks that it's only from birth. So after the 9, that it is important. They don't think about those 9 months before. But it's the most important period of your life, because then the set points are set for your later life. And that's also what concerns me about the dioxins, because then they have their influences, their endocrine disrupting effects during these early days.
We've got about 30,000 genes in our body. The majority of those are there to control development. We use actually a minority of the genes on a daily basis as adults. So these other genes that control development come out, they're unwound, they're used during development, then they're packed up and put away until the next generation. Now, the way they control development is by using chemical signals. They're called second messengers, and hormones are an example. Hormones work in the body in very, very low concentrations, parts per trillion, low parts per trillion. And if you can disrupt the way in which those signals are transmitted to the developing fetus, you can produce changes in the way the fetus is put together. Now, we know that if you don't construct tissues properly, that can be a risk for cancer later in life.
Library.
We came out here. It was like an ideal spot. The only thing we didn't realize in 1967 when we bought it, that we were 3 miles downriver from a chemical plant. I have 5 children, and 3 of them have immune disorders. And they used to play down there a lot. We had a boat, and they used to row the boat. I used to tie it to the trees, and then they would row all around there. And when they came in, I would always make sure that they immediately took all the clothes off and we washed them, and that they would take a shower right away. But I know that they played in the dirt down there because they were young kids, and children do play in the dirt. And they rode bicycles and motorcycles down there, and they churn up dust and dirt. And my husband, when he was diagnosed with colon cancer, my sister-in-law, when I called her to tell her, she said, oh no, I would expect diabetes or heart disease, not cancer. We don't have any cancer in the family. He actually got into a pilot study that the health department in Michigan was doing. And they came out and took his dioxin levels on the Thursday before he died. And he was really pretty weak. But he said that he would do anything if it would help prove that, you know, there were problems with living here and the chemical contamination in the area. He had a high level of different dioxin contaminants in his blood, high for his age level, like in the 95 percentile. My husband died at 70. His uncles lived to be in their 90s. And as I said, he wasn't sick. So, you know, you say, well, 70, that's a good life. But if there were 20 more years, I would have liked to have had the 20 years. I need to get a Kleenex, I'm sorry. I just say all my stoic genes left me. And my husband died. So I'm not as stoic as I used to be.
Piloting a corporate jet for Dow can be interesting and rewarding, particularly when it's an angel flight. The Corporate Angel Network uses empty seats on company business trips to fly cancer patients who need specialized treatment. Patients like Christy. This company does great things. This is one of them. Dow lets you do great things.
Dow declined to be interviewed for this film. If given the opportunity, we would have been curious to know what that little girl's dioxin levels were.
You know, we've heard people say, I don't see dead bodies floating down the river. Is that what it takes to get a response from public health officials, from elected officials? I don't know. But again, cancer is very ubiquitous in our area. We have, you know, these tremendous cancer rates. And is dioxin responsible for all of it? No. Part of it? Oh, probably. But we have PCBs. We have many, many other contaminants out there in our environment that could be responsible for this. The dioxin is just a part of it. You know, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and as a healthcare professional, I mean, I'm painfully aware of it. Everybody's walking around with their pink ribbons on, and good. Run for a cure, walk for a cure, but could somebody just stop, turn around, look back, and look for a cause? Look for a cause. Why are, you know, so many women developing breast cancer, and more at younger and younger ages? And, you know, and I think part of it is that it's easy to be hopeful and to work to look for a cure. But when you have to turn around and look for a cause, then you start ascribing blame. You start attaching identifiers to industry, to individuals in boardrooms or whatever. That becomes very difficult for people to do. It's too controversial, it's too adversarial. Those are things people don't always want to do. Yeah.
100% of cancers are genetically determined, which means that for this cell to become cancerous, need to have a genetic change in its genome, okay? It doesn't mean that 100% of cancers are hereditary, completely different story. So even though 100% of cancers are genetically determined, only 5 to 10% of cancers are hereditary. The importance of knowing this is that a lot of people, they say, oh my God, I have nobody with cancer in my family, therefore I'm protected. False. Because 90 to 95% of cancers occur among people without family history of cancer.
There was a paper produced in the year 2000 in Sweden where they looked at 45,000 pairs of twins. This is the kind of classical thing. They tried to see what the influence of genetics was on the occurrence of certain cancers. And they found it was very low. It was like 15% or less. So that means the rest of it is down to the environment.
Childhood cancer has increased 30% in the past 2 decades. Testicular cancer, a cancer of young men, has increased 50% in every industrial country. Now that's not because of aging. And we are seeing an increase in cancer in the elderly, adjusted for the fact that there are more of them. Yes, we have more cancer because we're living longer and there are more older people, but that does not explain all of the increase in cancer that we're seeing today.
The Ramanzini Foundation is the only research facility in the world to perform full lifespan rodent studies on the carcinogenic potential of chemical substances. The foundation is also unique in that it does pathological screenings of every organ in every rodent tested. Long-term health studies of this kind, which can cost about $1 million, are not required by companies wishing to license a new synthetic chemical, drug, or genetically modified crop.
Our 2005 study on aspartame, the artificial sweetener, involved 1,800 rodents. Previous experiments on aspartame had 20 rodents per group or 40 rodents per group. And so when we came in and did 150 rodents per sex per group, it was very important results. As a rule, the US NTP sacrifices their rodents after 2 years of life. So their experiments usually take 110 weeks. That's considered the gold standard of bioassays. Whereas our experiments are lifespan, and rather than interrupt the experiment and sacrificing the animals at 110 weeks, our rodents live out their natural lifespan. About 50% of what they have studied has proven to be carcinogenic, and about 50% of what we have studied. There is data that shows that we actually only have scientific information, hard data, on about 2% of all known chemical substances. So it is a huge discrepancy between what we know and what we don't know. Unfortunately, we as citizens tend to confuse the absence of evidence with the absence of risk. But if an agent has not been adequately studied, adequately, and I would add independently studied, it does not mean that it is safe.
The tentative of industry is always to procrastinate the adjournment of regulation about chemical agent, chemical compounds. You know, industry used to do their own work, and it is understandable. What is not understandable, it is when scientists doesn't do the right work. And that is why most of the scientists are not independent. They are sponsored by industry, and most of the time they don't claim the conflict of interest. Our institute is working independently because it's supported by government, local and national. It's supported by international agency, but mainly is supported by citizens. And so we are free to choose what to study, and most we are free to say the truth. The only way to limit the cost of cure for cancer is to decrease the number of people who get sick of cancer. And to do that, you must try to do as much as possible to avoid the exposure to agents which are able to produce cancer. And now we have the tools to identify these agents. But unfortunately, there are no resources enough to perform the study which allow us to identify carcinogenic agents.
We've got to recognize that we have a lot of good science. We use studies in rodents to create drugs to treat cancer. How can we not use studies in rodents to identify things that cause it? It doesn't make sense. Curing cancer is an important thing to do. Believe me, I know that. But only focusing on curing cancer and ignoring the case for prevention has proved very costly. Costly in terms of human lives and costly in terms of what it means for our economy as well. We spent last year $100 billion on direct cancer treatment alone. We can't afford already to treat all the cases of cancer that we have. So no matter how much better we get at treatment, we won't be able to afford to provide that treatment for everybody.
In 2002, the top 10 drug companies in America made more profits than 490 of America's wealthiest companies combined. Helping raise profits are cancer drugs, which in 2005 alone rose nearly 16% compared to 3% for other prescriptions. Today, an average cancer drug prescription costs nearly $1,600 a month. The pharmaceutical industry spends about 14% of their budget on research and development and about 31% for marketing and administration. In fact, there are more pharmaceutical industry lobbyists in Washington, D.C. than members of Congress.
Back in 1990, an executive of Monsanto gave a speech in Canada to a secret society saying that if the CEOs of 10 major companies, 6 of those were drug companies, chemical companies, got together and influenced the White House, the Whitehall, the Japanese conundrum, and so on, they could rule the world. It began about 50 or 60 years ago as the rise of the chemical industry to control agriculture and agri-food. That's how it began. On the one hand, they're contaminating people's food, and then they do damage. Then they come back with drugs to treat them with. The Food and Drugs Act in the United States and the Food and Drugs Act in Canada are not being abided by. This is a very serious problem. This has been the fight that I have fought for the last 20 years in Canada, and together with my colleagues and my union and a lot of other people. And as a result of which, 3 of us ultimately were fired by Health Canada. 4 years they took to build up this case and ultimately fire us, and saying we should pass everything that America passes. And we're saying we cannot. We are a country. We're a sovereign country. We have a sovereign law. None of us refuse to conduct our work. If it's insubordination to pass drugs of questionable safety or harmful products, then, of course, we want to be insubordinate. If that's the way it is, let the Canadian government say then that this is what they're firing us for. The companies pressure to get us fired. This way, the longer they wait, the more time they get to continue doing what they're doing. They have got at least 10 years, it may take longer, to keep selling the same stuff and damaging the health of people to make profit on the backs of people's health. That was the insubordination.
The same chemical companies that brought us pesticides, chlorine, and dioxins have now embarked on a new frontier, biotechnology. This new technology has been used to transfer genes from one organism to another, and has subsequently enabled companies to patent and own the organisms that they genetically modify. That means that seeds, plants, and even trees, which are modified using this technology, can be privately owned by corporations for the first time in history.
I run out of seed. Didn't like it very much. My daddy always, when he ran out of seed, he went and bought some seed, and then he planted the new seed, and that's what he saved for the next year's planting. I went up there and I asked for some seed. They said, well, yep, we got some, but they're expensive seed. I said, how much are they? Well, I forgot what they was now, but they was quite a bit over. And I didn't sign an agreement with them. They didn't ask me to sign it because somebody else had done bought them back. Somebody had done bought them and carried them out and bought them back. So I got them and planted them. And they said, you can spray glyphosate over top of it. I said, oh, well, good, you know. And then so I went out there and I planted them. And then I did spray them over the top with glyphosate. I don't like to call it Roundup. That's Monsanto's deal. But anyway, I saved the seed. And that was when Monsanto come down on me. You know, they said they got a patent on it, this and that. You can't have a patent on seed because it's Mother Nature, bottom line.
All they did was infect the seed.
The seed's already been here. Only thing comes a patent is something totally new. And the seed is not new. I'm sorry. Scumbags out of St. Louis.
So the guy that sold you the seed, he forgot to have you sign a license? He just said, here's a new bag of seed and...
No, the seed was brought back by somebody else. Somebody done signed off on them. He wanted to get rid of them because he didn't want to keep them no more. Well, the Monsanto lawyer, when he got me deposition, well, did you read this bag of seed? I said, sir, I said, I don't never read a bag of seed. Because I'm too busy working on equipment and stuff like that and then trying to keep it running. Damn you damn bag of seed.
Did they explain how they calculated these numbers for patent infringement?
The jury did not know what the hell to do. They didn't know where that's coming or going because the way simple told them, says, all this trial's going to be about this. How much damage the Rouse had done to Monsanto. What? They didn't know what to do. They didn't know what a bag of seed was worth, and then Simple went back to this agreement on the back of it, which I didn't sign, it was forged. Here is the Monsanto agreement that was forged by one of Monsanto representatives. That's not my handwriting. They saying that's my handwriting right there. This is my handwriting right down here.
All day long.
That's my handwriting. Does that look anything? It cost me $5,000 to prove that was not my damn handwriting. And Judge Rodney Simple would not allow this to be in the court proceedings. Our justice system literally sucks. It literally sucks. It's just a corrupt company. Terrible corrupt.
If you had known half of this stuff, would you have done business with them?
Well, Lord, no. No, man. Farmers are the less majority. But I worked hard. I bought farms. I cleaned them up. I run dozers and track hoes through the years and stopped them from washing and everything. And now Monsanto wants to be the dominant party and then take every damn thing over to make me into a damn guinea pig. A guinea pig I'm not.
Mr. Ralph was fined over $2.9 million for patent infringement in regards to saving seeds. The district judge in Mr. Ralph's case was Rodney Sipple, a former attorney who worked at the law firm that represents Monsanto and who was listed as one of Monsanto's attorneys in a 1997 class action lawsuit. From 2000 to 2008, Rodney Sipple was the judge in 11 cases, of which Monsanto was the plaintiff or defendant. The 11 cases were ruled in Monsanto's favor.
Most of the chemical industry, a good part of it, in post-World War I period, was directly connected. IG Farben in Germany, they had licenses with the Standard Oil Trust in the U.S. and so forth. Even up through World War II, there were congressional investigations about the Nazi IG Farben having business with the Rockefeller Standard Oil Group. For example, the much touted Green Revolution, it wasn't so much a Green Revolution at all, but the original impetus came after the war from Nelson Rockefeller and his brothers, who said, look, we have a huge chemical capacity we built up during the war, nitrogen and so forth, for making bombs. What can we use that for? And some of their scientists said, well, you can use nitrogen and fertilizer for agriculture. In my research some years ago, looking at the whole emergence of the whole debate around genetically modified crops, GMO, I found that the original research grants came from a New York foundation, and that was the Rockefeller Foundation, and that they had spent over $100 million of their foundation money to finance scientists around the world to do research to genetically modify some of the basic food seeds of the human food chain and animal food chain. And the more I researched into this, the more I found that 3, maybe 4 companies, if you include the Swiss Syngenta, but 3 main companies, and one among them was dominant, and that's Monsanto, that these, what I call in the book, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, these private seed companies, they were originally chemical companies, stood poised within 5 or 10 years at the rate they were going to dominate the basic seeds and patent those seeds. That much power concentrated into 4 corporate entities, 3 of whom have decades-long track record of fraud, deception, lying to the public about the dangers of dioxin, the dangers of Agent Orange in the Vietnam War and after, and so forth. That really set off the alarm bells for me.
I got involved in the GM issue because, you know, it was a new technology bringing opportunities, and I still see them as opportunities. I was the only participant that actually took part in 4 years of trialling. Were the Monsanto, Agrivo, Syngenta, I mean, they were all in this grouping and agreed to fund the trial work, which all told, there were 260 odd different, I mean, not just canola, because we did spring and winter, and I did both hit on the farm because I grow spring rape occasionally when I have to, when I have a failure in the winter. So I did both of those trials on the farm for 3 years, and as I say, I did the first year as a winter protocol year when they decided exactly how they were going to set the trial up. It didn't take me long to realise that this was a potentially simpler way to farm, therefore it was cheaper, therefore there were benefits that could be seen to be able to be passed on, because if it was cheaper for me to grow, then if the price of the end product came down, I could still produce it, because after the end of the day, I've got to make a margin whatever I'm doing. As it happened, because of the technology, we were also finding that the GM crop yielded a bit more than the conventional crop in the same field under otherwise similar management, because I was doing it all. Business works is in creating a new idea, and a novel idea, and then, yes, exploiting the financial benefit. I'm sorry, that's what these companies are there for. It is hardly surprising that they need to make a profit, because without that they can't make the next new novel idea.
Are you growing GM crops now?
No.
You're not?
Not because I don't want to, but we're not allowed to. And that is a European control system which I disagree with. Would I grow a GM crop? The answer is, if I had a market. I wouldn't harm my own business by bringing something on farm that could do it. We need to find out whether this technology has anything to offer, and that is why I'm prepared to offer the site. And I have no evidence that it's affecting anyone locally, health-wise or any other way. And nothing ever was shown out of it. At the end of 4 years of trials, none of my neighbouring farmers or anybody else had a single additional problem by me growing that particular type of crop.
After, 13 years of crops in the field, the theory is that we have a herbicide-tolerant trait that will reduce the demand for herbicides, and we have a BT trait that will protect farmers or protect crops from some pests. That's the theory.
even that can't be proven finally at this stage. There's still a constant battle, yin and yang, going on between researchers and the companies to show whether or not this really does work or not. We're not seeing increased food production. We're not seeing increased benefits to farmers in terms of their production costs. We're not seeing improved nutritional qualities on our table. So there really isn't a clear benefit.
Everywhere you go, it's the same thing. You go to the universities, the researchers have to apply for grants to companies. Companies are on the campuses. They enlist students from the beginning who can do a PhD and on what subject, and whether they can publish those materials because they're now owned by the companies. So it's wherever you go, there's this kind of corruption going on. This is not science. The people who are administering in these departments are not competent or even qualified or educated in science. These are accountants, these are lawyers, these are MBAs, these are anything but scientists. The universities themselves have become part of that corruption.
What do you think about genetically modified foods?
And just in general?
Yeah.
I think it's definitely safe. Like, as long as there's regulation and there's been research and everything, there's no research showing that it's not safe or that there's any difference between it and regular non-modified food.
And scholarships, do they give out scholarships?
Oh yeah, there's lots. Yeah, lots from like Cargill, Monsanto, Bayer, then yeah, all the different chemical companies and everything like that for sure. So yeah, they're getting involved, and they definitely have a presence on campus for sure.
We have to cover cons so that you can understand the public concern with it. Like, oh my God, we're consuming transgenic DNA. What is this going to do to us? Nothing. You've been consuming DNA your whole life. It's just the public generally is uninformed or don't inform themselves via newspaper or whatever. So they're really skeptical. So yeah, we have to cover those so that if we're ever confronted with that, we can tell them what's really going on and why it's not that big of an issue most of the time.
OGM, ah là là, je vais avoir l'air con.
Non, c'est pas. Mais devinez.
C'est biologique en tout cas, non.
D'après ce que j'ai compris, OGM égale poison. Est-ce que vous savez si vous en mangez?
Je pense tous les jours, ouais. Même sans le savoir.
Je suis pas contre en fait. Enfin, je suis pas contre. Je suis sûr que le seul moyen de nourrir 5 milliards de personnes, c'est de modifier les gènes.
I hate it. Yeah. And why? Because I think it's not healthy, it's not natural, and I think you have to eat the food Mother Nature gave you, the way it came out of the soil. So I think it's not good that people do scary stuff with it.
Do you think you eat genetically modified foods?
Oh, absolutely. Every day. Yeah.
What kind of genetically modified foods do you eat?
All kinds of packaged stuff, probably. Beef we eat, pork, chicken, sure, everything.
Like grapes with no seeds and hybrid foods like bananas, stuff like that, that has no living force, no real enzymes to digest itself. Sucks. Sucks.
Generally, it produces the ability to provide more food for more people. I mean, that's the biggest advantage of it.
You know, there's a lot of negative aspects about it because we go over to, like, say, Africa or whatnot. They're really negative because they think it's poison to them. You know, they have this misbelief, or whether it's a true belief or not, that's what they believe. So it's a really difficult, which can be really frustrating because, hey, it's something. You know, would you rather die of starvation right now, or would you rather die of cancer, you know, in 4 years?
Not something you should test in Africans, but I think in the long run people will test it on them, because I know for a fact that a lot of donations, food donations that come into the country are genetically modified food, even though governments don't want it, and then you have situations where they can't afford to feed their own people, so they just accept, you know, that kind of food.
I think it's a good thing.
Tell me why.
Because it can increase production, and it can then build sort of all sorts of disease resistance and make food have extra vitamins in it.
Isn't all food genetically modified? For years people have been choosing seeds and picking beans and potatoes. I mean, people have been genetically modifying for centuries.
So what exactly are genetically modified or genetically engineered foods?
No!
But you have lots of them.
I know, but I'm studying them. See? This is a genetically modified tomato.
What does that mean?
Well, let me explain. And if you're still hungry afterwards, you can eat the tomato. Genetic engineering, or modifying an organism, means that a foreign gene or bacteria is inserted into the DNA of another plant or animal. For example, in 1985, a human gene that produces the human growth hormone was inserted into a pig's DNA.
Why did he do that?
To make a faster growing pig. These genetically modified pigs had arthritis, ulcers, enlarged hearts, and renal disease, and were born with no anus or genitals.
That's disgusting!
Maybe this will fix it.
Hi, I'm DNA.
You see, to make these insect-resistant plants, or better animals, the desired genes are coated with gold and loaded into a gene gun. The scientist then fires the gene gun, hoping some of the genes end up in the right place in some of the DNA.
Is the DNA dead?
No, but some structural damage takes place, causing unpredictable consequences. We're not exactly sure what this damage will do down the road. Sometimes foreign proteins are created. It's not an exact science, so we don't know.
Maybe this will fix it.
Changing the host's DNA by inserting a foreign gene is called insertion mutation. Studies have shown that insertion mutation can lead to leukemia in children.
But I don't want leukemia.
Well, the saying goes, you have to die sometime.
Don't worry, I can fix that.
C'est quand même la première fois dans l'histoire de l'humanité qu'on est capable de transformer industriellement le patrimoine héréditaire des êtres vivants. Il serait malsain de ne pas se dire est-ce que ça ne peut pas avoir des conséquences et de ne pas bien les contrôler. C'est quand même terrible. Et donc, quand on met des gènes artificiels n'importe où en bombardant un organisme, il peut y avoir, pas systématiquement, mais il peut y avoir des effets secondaires sur l'ensemble du métabolisme de la plante.
If somebody could prove that these GMOs are dangerous, and really could prove that, of course, it would be very positive, because he would have arguments that nobody else has. But as long as nobody has the arguments, it's better to go on from thinking there is no reason why they should be dangerous.
J'ai pris les 10 premiers polluants dans les rivières et dans les eaux de surface, et il se trouve que dedans, à la première ou troisième place, il y avait les résidus des Roundup. Le glyphosate et l'AMPA, ça s'appelle. Et donc, j'ai utilisé aussi les PCB, les dérivés de l'atrazine, le lindane, le bisphénol A, j'ai tout essayé. Il se trouve que le Roundup est un des plus toxiques, et il se trouve que 75% des OGM de la planète sont faits pour le contenir. C'est-à-dire que le soja au Roundup, qui est la principale plante OGM du monde, par exemple, elle est faite pour contenir du Roundup. Donc ça simplifie les méthodes d'agriculture intensive et ça permet d'éviter d'autres désherbants au profit du Roundup, dont l'utilisation augmente par 10 dans les aliments. Et on s'est rendu compte que les cellules mouraient très très vite en 24 heures si on utilisait le produit dilué 100 000 fois, mais tel qu'il est vendu en magasin. C'est-à-dire vous prenez 1 litre, vous le mettez dans 100 000 litres et c'est encore toxique. Alors on s'est dit, mais pourquoi Monsanto ne l'a pas vu? Et on s'est rendu compte que dans les tests qu'ils avaient fait avec les rats, ils avaient étudié un des composants, le glyphosate seul, sur les rats, mais pas le produit en entier. Et donc, ils ont divisé au moins par 10 ou par 100 les effets toxiques qu'ils ont pu voir. Mais quand même, ils gardent les données confidentielles. Et donc ça, c'est complètement anormal. Et c'est pour la même raison qu'on a regardé les effets sur un maïs transgénique qui avait du Roundup, et les effets sur un autre maïs transgénique qui avait un autre insecticide, qui était aussi commercialisé par Monsanto. Parce que Monsanto a fait les PCB, c'est un des plus grands chimistes de la planète, et ils ont 90% des brevets des biotechnologies qui sont passés dans leurs mains. Donc on a pris ce maïs transgénique. Moi je faisais partie de la commission qui évaluait ces maïs. Et on a dit, où sont les analyses de sang? Déjà, les tests ne dépassaient pas 3 mois, ce qui était complètement fou sur les rats. Et ils cachaient les analyses de sang, pas pour la commission, mais pour le public. Il y avait des effets. Et les autres gens de la commission, il y en avait beaucoup qui disaient non, c'est pas grave, c'est pas la peine. Nous on disait au moins il faut recommencer. Et on n'a pas recommencé. Alors on a demandé que ce soit public. Il a fallu aller jusqu'en cour d'appel, parce que Monsanto a été en cour d'appel pour empêcher que les scientifiques du monde entier et le public ne voient les analyses de sang des rats qui ont mangé leur OGM pendant 3 mois seulement. Vous imaginez la plus grande compagnie du monde, qui vend le plus grand désherbant du monde, et qui vend le plus d'OGM au monde, quasiment, qui va en cour d'appel pour empêcher qu'on voit les analyses de sang des rats qui en ont mangé pendant 3 mois de leur OGM. C'est fou. Et donc, on a publié les effets qu'on a vus. Il y avait augmentation de 40% du taux de graisse, 10% du taux de sucre chez les femelles, augmentation du poids du foie, augmentation du poids du corps. Ça ressemblait à un symptôme prédiabétique. Les reins allaient mal, les analyses d'urine étaient déréglées. Chez les mâles, les analyses d'urine étaient encore plus déréglées. Les reins perdaient du poids. Et leur foie allait mal. Depuis 30 ans, il n'y a aucun test qui ait été fait par des gouvernements. Tous les médicaments du monde sont testés seulement par les compagnies pharmaceutiques. Et tous les pesticides, pareil.
In the late 1990s, Patrick Dukoczko bought seeds at his local organic supplier. The seeds turned out to be contaminated with GMOs, so he filed a complaint to uncover where the contamination originated. But in 2001, the case was dropped. Mr. Dukoczko was then contacted by a group of American farmers to join them in a class action lawsuit against Monsanto, DuPont, Dow Chemical, AstraZeneca, and Novartis International, accusing them of engaging in antitrust activities and failure to test for human health and environmental safety. Coincidentally, the judge was Rodney Sippel, the same judge as in Mr. Ralph's case. The case was ruled in favor of the chemical companies.
Le gène qu'on a retrouvé chez moi, c'est un gène breveté Monsanto et qui m'a été vendu dans des semences d'une société Asgro qui est filiale de Monsanto. Donc j'ai accepté de participer à cette action collective au tribunal aux États-Unis, qui m'a amené à aller témoigner 1 an plus tard, en 2000, à Washington, et à répondre aux questions des avocats de Monsanto pendant une journée. Des questions du style, est-ce que vous connaissez le nom de vos voisins, quel est le montant de vos impôts, où est-ce que vous payez vos impôts, des choses qui ont beaucoup à voir avec les OGM. Depuis cette histoire-là, je ne fais plus de soja. Je n'ai pas pu garder mes semences puisqu'elles étaient contaminées. Moi, le blé, c'est aujourd'hui ce qui me rapporte le plus dans ma rotation, puisque je le valorise, je fais un petit peu de farine. S'il y a des OGM dans ma farine, mes clients n'en veulent pas. C'est un argument purement commercial, mais donc ça veut dire que je ferme la porte. J'arrête l'agriculture et je vends mes terres à celui qui aura semé les OGM à côté. c'est le blé tel que je le passe au moulin. Dans ce blé, vous avez plusieurs dizaines de vieilles variétés anciennes, qui ne sont plus dans les catalogues. Et il faut le savoir que je n'ai pas le droit de vendre en tant que semence. Je ne peux pas vendre ça à un voisin, même pas lui donner, en lui disant tiens, ça c'est des semences de vieilles variétés, tu peux les semer chez toi. C'est interdit. Il y a un voisin ici qui sème des OGM en grande surface, qui est donc un gars qui fait la promotion des OGM de manière très agressive et très motivée, très militante, on va dire, et qui cette année, en 2008, comme il n'a pas pu en faire, il est passé à la télé en pleurant, en disant regardez ce produit toxique, en montrant un bidon avec une tête de mort dessus, et en disant ce produit très toxique, cet insecticide, je vais être obligé de le passer parce que je peux pas faire des OGM. Donc en gros, on l'oblige à polluer, quoi. Alors que ça fait peut-être 40 ans qu'il pollue abondamment sans se poser de questions, et que sur les 400 autres hectares où il fait pas des OGM, il pollue également abondamment. On essaye de nous faire croire aujourd'hui. J'ai assisté à 2 réunions au ministère de l'Agriculture à Paris récemment, où on a essayé de nous imposer un texte d'arrêté, un projet d'arrêté de coexistence qui détermine à 25 mètres la distance entre 2 parcelles de maïs. Donc moi, mon maïs bio, si celui à côté il a plus de 25 mètres, il peut semer des OGM. Or, on a démontré, nous, en 2006 et en 2007, devant huissier, que des parcelles à 300 mètres étaient contaminées. Alors oui, c'est vrai, peut-être que le maïs bio, il n'y en a pas beaucoup. Peut-être qu'il va y avoir quelqu'un qui a une parcelle de 2 hectares de maïs bio et qui est entouré à côté de gars qui ont 200 hectares de maïs OGM. Alors lui, effectivement, il pèse rien, il n'a qu'à disparaître. Voilà, on en est là aujourd'hui. Tu es petit, tu disparais. Place à ceux qui vont nourrir la planète, ces grands agriculteurs, agro-managers industriels, c'est eux qui vont nourrir la planète. Alors qu'ils l'ont empoisonné depuis des années. C'est quand même incroyable qu'on en soit arrivé là, quoi. On voit bien l'objectif. L'objectif, quand même, c'est de pouvoir vendre la semence et le bidon d'herbicide avec. Puisque c'est la même société qui fait les deux. Donc l'objectif, il n'est pas d'émanciper l'agriculteur, il n'est pas de le rendre autonome, il n'est pas de faire un meilleur produit, et il n'est pas pour le consommateur d'avoir un meilleur produit. Donc il y a le problème des pesticides, il y a le problème des OGM. Qu'est-ce que ça fait de manger un OGM? Qu'est-ce que ça fait sur notre chaîne d'ADN à nous, sur nos cellules à nous? Qu'est-ce que ça va faire sur celles de nos enfants? On ne sait pas, quoi.
Aujourd'hui, il y a une douzaine d'années quand même que les OGM sont cultivés à une échelle importante dans le monde et qui nourrissent à la fois nos animaux et nous-mêmes directement. Et on n'a pas constaté d'accidents dus à la consommation d'OGM, ni d'accidents directs, ni d'accidents indirects.
Mais le temps de latence d'un cancer peut aller de 15 à 25 ans. Et par exemple, on sait que les OGM ne sont pas étiquetés aux États-Unis ni au Canada. Donc comment savoir si les OGM peuvent causer le cancer si on ne peut pas les détecter?
Non, mais c'est vrai qu'aujourd'hui, bon, je ne suis pas médecin, mais il y a effectivement beaucoup d'interrogations sur la façon dont arrivent les cancers, la façon dont ils se développent. Beaucoup de gens pensent que ça peut être lié à l'environnement, que ça peut être lié en partie à l'alimentation. Je crois que tout le monde se cherche et tout le monde cherche. Beaucoup d'équipes travaillent là-dessus, mais il n'y a pas de réponse, effectivement, directe aujourd'hui sur ces questions-là. Donc, ça veut dire aussi que c'est pour ça que c'est important de suivre effectivement la consommation des produits, bon, sous prétexte parce qu'il y a 2 hypothèses, hein, il y a 2 façons de faire. Où on dit, on pense qu'il peut y avoir une relation directe ou indirecte, on arrête tout. Où on dit, on ne sait pas, mais on n'a pas de certitude ni dans un sens ni dans l'autre, et on continue à observer les choses et à regarder ce qui se passe pour pouvoir agir si un jour il s'avérait effectivement qu'on détecte un problème.
Great news for Iraq today. The genetically modified crop, an exciting innovation, is being introduced across the country.
That's right, Nancy. Paul Burmer's Order 81, the patent, industrial design, undisclosed information, integrated circuit, and plant variety law, is making its debut in Iraq. Now, Iraqi farmers will follow in the footsteps of their farming friends, Canada, the US, and Argentina, in giving genetically modified crops a warm welcome. These new crops will not need to be tested for health impacts, an American official stated, because no one else has tested them, so why should Iraq? The new technology will have Iraqi farmers working on behalf of Monsanto to help feed the world.
As in Canada and the US, private investigators are helping make sure that the Iraqi farmer uses the new technology correctly. Farmers who use the seeds without permission will face stiff penalties under Order 81. For example, if wind, insects, or birds carry the seeds to the farmer's land, both the farmer and the guilty bird will face some heavy fines, land confiscations, and be ordered to hang the Go Monsanto banner from their upstairs window.
But Iraq is not the only beneficiary of the genetically modified crop bonanza. The Bill Gates Foundation has hired Monsanto Vice President Robert Horsch as Senior Program Officer to help with the African food crisis, because Africans do not know how to farm their own land. Monsanto and Bill Gates were forced by goodwill to help this clueless continent.
GM crops look like a step in the right direction for humanity.
Well, I think so, Nancy. Did you know Monsanto even tried to patent a breeding technique for pigs?
That's a company making innovative progress, Dick.
And every pig born from that technique would belong to Monsanto.
Gosh, I hope they didn't patent positions in the Kama Sutra.
Well, Nancy, if they patented the wheelbarrow, they may own my kids.
On travaille à un système d'échange entre agriculteurs. Et de toute façon, toutes ces variétés-là, c'est ce qu'on appelle des ressources phytogénétiques. Donc, il n'y a pas de certificat d'obtention dessus, il n'y a pas de brevet. Elles sont tombées dans le domaine public. Et donc, nous, on a la possibilité, malgré que les groupements des semenciers ne nous reconnaissent pas, on a la possibilité de se les échanger. Le but, c'est que toutes ces graines, elles vivent dans les champs, et de conserver de façon vivante et dynamique, pas avoir des congélateurs avec des graines qui restent là juste pour avoir finalement la carte génétique. Nous, ce qui nous intéresse, c'est que ça aille dans les champs et puis que ça évolue, que ça bouge, que ça... Voilà. La plus grande perte, ce sont pour les agriculteurs irakiens, parce que n'ayant plus de variétés vraiment chez eux, le gouvernement américain a mis en place un certain nombre de lois pour remettre en route le pays, et il a instauré des lois sur les semences auprès de l'Irak, avec le système des certificats d'obtention, des brevets, alors que ce pays-là avait la libre circulation de ses semences. Et en fait, en détruisant le stock de semences, c'était surtout une façon de mettre en place une nouvelle réglementation et qui, elle, obligerait les agriculteurs à aller acheter les semences auprès des semenciers. Pour l'instant, les semenciers qui travaillent pour l'agriculture industrielle ne sont pas intéressés par ce type de variété-là, parce qu'elles ne correspondent pas à leur système de production. Alors, si le contexte vient changer, que le pétrole se raréfie, qu'on prend conscience qu'il faut arrêter de mettre des produits chimiques dans la terre, de cultiver d'une autre façon, alors peut-être demain, effectivement, ces variétés-là auront de l'avance et pourront les intéresser. Mais pour l'instant, ils sont persuadés que leur système est durable.
This French farmer is completely self-sufficient. Along with 450 million other farmers worldwide, he practices organic polycultural farming. Compared to conventional chemical agriculture, this type of farming produces soil with 3 times more earthworms, produces 80% more yields in developing nations, and fruits and vegetables that are up to 40% more nutritious. Studies even show that this type of organic farming could feed today's population and more. So why do governments still give the majority of subsidies to conventional chemical farming? Companies claim we need GM crops to feed the world. If this is the case, then why, in America, where GM crops have been commercialized the longest, are 35 million Americans still food insecure?
Si on expérimente quelque chose qu'on met dans l'environnement et qu'on n'a pas la méthode de suivi, c'est en fait presque criminel, parce qu'on n'a pas vraiment de sérieux dans ce qu'on fait. Et pourtant, c'est ça qu'ont fait l'ensemble des gouvernements du monde, parce que les biotechnologies, c'est leur religion. C'est-à-dire qu'ils croient que ça va se développer, que ça va être bien, mais c'est plus une croyance, comme quand avant on croyait que la Terre était plate, parce qu'on nous l'avait dit, qu'une réalité.
We do care enormously about safety. People who work in industry have ethics too. Yes, we are citizens who happen to work in industry. Second, out of very good business sense, if today you make a product and where through carelessness the product affects the health or affects the environment, that's extremely bad for your business. So you're going to go a long way to avoid doing that. Golden rice was imagined and then developed with huge amounts of work at the University of Zurich in Switzerland by a man named Ingo Potrykus. And after several years of hard work, he managed to make rice produce a lot of provitamin A. Another word for that is carotene, the same carotene you have in carrots, to make rice grains produce significant amounts of that. And the rice looks yellowish because of that. I mean, why do you make golden rice? It's to prevent blindness in children of the very poor who don't have alternative access to vitamin A. The very poor cannot afford to pay. So we always knew from the start that you had to look at this as a humanitarian project. But even though myself and the team, my team of biosafety experts, we work in a company environment, I mean, the guys would have worked Sundays on this, huh? I mean, who would not want to be associated? If you're a professional, you see a thing like that, you see it working, you say, damn, if we could get this through.
Does it taste different if it looks yellow?
It looks yellow. I cannot tell you if it tastes different because it's not approved for food use, therefore I cannot eat it.
Oh, you never tried it?
I've never tried it because I'm a regulatory person, madam. If the law says you will not do it, I will not do it. At this moment, a Chinese research institute, because now we're 10 years advanced, a Chinese institute is now looking at bioavailability. That's a heavy word to say if the vitamin is in the plant, in the seed, how much of that vitamin is going to be taken up by the child's digestive tract and actually do something useful. Those studies are currently underway by a Chinese research institute, and there, of course, they are eating it on a regular basis now. I am totally confident that that golden rice is perfectly good to eat. It's just that, based in Europe, where the product is not approved for human consumption, if we, as a safety and regulatory experts, start finding corners around the rules, I mean, then that doesn't work, you know?
You were never even tempted to make a little bowl of rice?
Was I tempted? Of course I was tempted. Whenever people talk publicly about biotechnology, somehow the discussion very rapidly comes to GMOs, GM crops, and GM food. Let's not forget that that's 5% of biotechnology. Let's not forget that insulin is all transgenic these days. Everybody who has anemia gets EPO, which is all transgenic these days. A lot of new cancer drugs are transgenic. Several vaccines. The cervical cancer vaccine, about which a lot was said over the last several months, is a transgenic, a genetically modified vaccine. And so I always regret that the discussion about biotechnology sort of very quickly tends to narrow down on this one subject and forgetting that enormous wealth of products of biotechnology that are already there and that are affecting our lives every day.
Someone from the European Union Commission explained it to my wife. At the time, they didn't know that she was my wife. She doesn't carry my name. So she's Professor Bardot and not Professor Pustai. They explained it to her that if they repeated the study, if they found similar things that what we found. They wouldn't be able to hush it up again. It's once it was bad enough, twice it's almost impossible.
As a friend and colleague of Professor Putzai, what are your thoughts on how he was treated?
Oh, it was abominable. As I say, I've never seen anything quite so rapid. That here he was, elated at having actually pointed out differences, which he thought was vital to the whole well-being of foodstuff. Then within very, very short space of time to be without a job and warned in a very savage, unfeeling way that he hadn't to mention anything, go home and don't speak to anybody.
What I regarded also as the most important thing of our studies is that there is an immune response. And in each case, since then, whatever the GM was, they looked at the immune status of the animals. They always found that it was jeopardized.
When we looked at the rat who had been having the GM, then the crypt was elongated, and that we wouldn't have expected. If the GM is substantially equivalent, in other words the same, then the lengths should be identical, but they weren't. Throughout the whole intestinal tract, the lining was growing, it was thickened. So we thought this was evidence that there was a growth factor at work. Now, if you apply that to a transition lesion in the human, for example, at the lower end of the esophagus, if you applied a growth factor there, then you might hasten the development of malignancy at the lower end of the esophagus. And similarly, in the stomach, there's once again transition lesions there, which normally will take time to develop into cancer.
The gut and its immune system regards this as a foreign material. It's almost like an infection. It's not an infection, but the immune system just sees something coming in as strange, foreign, and it has to react to it. I just think that it was highly irresponsible to foist on us something that was not properly examined. And we are all made to be exposed to it. That's highly irresponsible. Or in fact, I would say that it's probably criminal. But who the hell listens to me?
Monsanto, BASF, Bayer, DuPont, Dow Chemical, Syngenta, and AstraZeneca declined to be interviewed for this film. In the last 2 hours, about 2,800 people were diagnosed with cancer. Friends will walk down hospital halls. Families will wait in hospital waiting rooms. Most will not be given a pamphlet about the dangers of dioxins or be asked if their daily intake of vegetables were laced with chlorinated pesticides. And most new patients, it is safe to say, will not be told about the idiot cycle.